Hey guys, Mikey here with 303 Mobile Welding, and today I'm bringing you guys kind of a new video. We're going to be talking about welding machines, which I think is a video that really isn't talked about or has been done very well on YouTube, and that's what today's video is all about. It's welding machines. What do you need? What do you don't need? What's the biggest thing that that encompasses buying a welding machine, and what machine is right for you? So we're going to talk about four scenarios, 4 use cases per se, and what you should be buying for that, and and we're going to factor in budget into that. All right, so let's get started. So 4 use cases and 4 use case scenarios. So let's go hobby. Okay. Sorry, you guys are going to see me swatting. The yellow jackets this time of year are just insane. The next one is pipeline, structural, and let's go general. Okay. So these are kind of the 4 categories that I would say that you get put in when you're either starting out welding or you're an experienced veteran. Okay, so let's start out with the hobby, because I think a lot of people are probably going to be hobby welders that are viewing these videos, things like that. But if you are experienced and you're maybe not doing it professionally, or you have been doing it professionally, you don't have your own machine, you might fall into the hobby category. So let's talk about it. So I think the biggest thing is let's say small iron, and what I mean by that is, you're really kind of, let's say, I would say probably 3/8 or smaller as far as thickness. Okay, you're maybe doing handrails, okay, for your own house, things like that. Probably going to be more on short circuit MIG. Probably going to be on, if you are stick welding, let's say 140 amps or less. Okay. And that probably applies to short circuit MIG as well. And it really, you can do, and so with that, the machines that are listed for this category here, okay, are going to be, if you're just starting out and you want to get into it, I would say like a Hobart 140. And I know as soon as I said that, people are going to lose their mind on YouTube, okay? The reason I recommend the Hobart is I actually still use one. I've had it for a long time. I bought it probably 3 years ago, and it's still running. I've put like 6 different cords on it because I keep, they get trampled on, whatever. But still the same gun, new liner, buy liners, things like that. But for the reality of it is it's a great machine. It does what it needs to do. It's heavy, okay, but for a machine that's under $800, this is a great machine. So if budget is really kind of an issue, I would say the Hobart 140 is a great machine to start out on. And it really it just works. It allows you a lot of versatility as far as being able to run everything up to 035 wire, but it also goes down to like 023 wire, which can be really handy if you're doing like sheet metal work and things like that, where you don't want a lot of blow through, or you don't want a lot of heat and dissipation, especially if you're not if you're not going to follow the TIG welding path. I would say the Hobart is a good choice. As far as stick welders go, I would say probably a really good stick welder to start out with would probably be the, you could do the Hobart Stickmate, I think is what it's called. You can also do the Miller Maxstar 161. Okay, those are 2 really good machines to start out if you're doing stick welding and you just know that you're going to always be doing stuff outside. Maybe you don't have a workshop, or you're doing it in your driveway or whatever, and you don't have the ability to contain your gas or whatever that is. I would say those 2 are really good. And one thing to always remember is that flux core arc welding is always available to you, and stick is available to you at virtually no cost. And what I mean by that is you can just go pick up a roll of flux core wire and go out, put it in your machine and weld. It doesn't matter the conditions, you can weld. Okay, same thing with stick welding. It can be snowing outside, I know because I've been there, and you can run it and it'll burn you. You know, if the pipe's super cold, heat it up a little bit, you know, whatever, but you'll be able to sink that rod in. And that's kind of what rig welders kind of default to, is stick welding, because that's where a lot of the background comes from. But as far as ease of use and just learning how to weld, a flux core is really the easiest. And I would say probably a close second to easiest would be MIG welding, okay? Okay. So second would be MIG welding. And then obviously third is going to be stick welding. That's going to be like, you know, your third hardest to weld. And then you can always look at TIG, okay? So TIG welding is one of those things that it does, the consumables to get into TIG welding is what's really gonna like be a problem for you probably, if budget's an issue. The cool thing is if you buy a Miller Maxstar or you buy a Hobart, you can run TIG weld. You can actually run your TIG welder off of that, because you just need the TIG torch, and then you can get this cool gas adapter that you can just hook your stinger to, and then it powers it, and you can actually DC TIG weld. So you're not going to be able to do aluminum or anything like that, so that's kind of where we'll leave that. So if you're a hobby welder, like I said, these are short lists. This is kind of the recommendations that I would have and where that goes. So the next thing is, let's say you're a pipeliner and you're a helper on the pipeline and you're looking to break out, okay? So we're going to be doing, you know, so 5G/6G welding, okay? I'll just do position. And the next thing that you're going to want to look at is arc profile, okay? Heavy duty run times, let's say probably want to be looking at something that is going to take a beating. And now in the industry, I would say something that's CC/CV, okay? But this is, we'll say, optional, just because we don't, not optimal, Jesus, really? Oh, hold on, everyone. It's gonna be optional, okay? So the machines that I would recommend for this, obviously everybody talks about the SA200, okay? But here's the thing. The SA200 was made in a few different versions. So let's talk about this real quick. The SA200 was made in a few different versions, and they all kind of encompass different things. So the first one that everybody talks about is the mid 60s to, or I would say probably late 50s to late 60s red-faced, okay? The reason that that machine is so key is because from 59 to 68 was all copper, okay? All right, and if you guys want, I'll post another video of me talking about what the different coils are and things like that. And that might be helpful for you because it's going to be more in depth about what the arc profile looks like and why you want all copper versus copper aluminum, what those things do. AC generators that do a DC weld, kind of profiles are characterized by that. So stay tuned for those videos. All right. So the 59 to 68 all copper, that's a great machine. The next one that you'll probably see a lot of is the SA250. And that's really kind of an all year kind of thing. The Pipe Pro, okay, and I would say SAE 300s and the classics. Okay. So the classic series from Lincoln. So classic 1, classic 2, classic 3, the newer classics. Here's the one thing that I'll say, and somebody's going to ask, why isn't the cross country up there? Here's why. The cross country is actually not, it is designed as a pipeline welder from the beginning, but it does have some issues with arc performance that we've seen in the field. And why it is, I don't know, but a lot of people still go with that, and they are good machines. The only difference, the only problem I really have with it is it kind of like is a competition between the Pipe Pro 400 and the cross country. So if you actually look at the machines side by side, the way that they're designed, the way they're set up, the AC style inverter welder, and and what it's designed for, to be able to run constantly, that's why it's designed as a cross country, because it's designed for running everything under the sun and being able to do it, but it not necessarily is good at, like, excellent at one particular thing. So if you are running only stick and you're running DC for stick for everything, I would say the SA200s, SA250s, really now, especially with the newer machines coming out, the SA300s and the classics are great machines. They are bomb-proof machines. They really work well. They do have a full copper coil. They follow the original SA200 design with the armature and everything that's in there. And realistically, that's what makes it a great welder. That's also what makes the arc profile so desirable. Downside is the cost is high. So if you can find a used machine in any really one of these, they're going to be great for pipeline, okay? And if you guys want to see a head-to-head battle, I'll post a video of that, me and Wally welding against each other with 2 different machines, and you can kind of see the different, arc profiles. You can see how much needs to be changed on one, how much doesn't need to be changed on the other, and things like that. So stay tuned for that. All right, so next is the structural, okay? And here's what I'm going to say. First is its 3G, 4G position, okay? Most of the time. You do weld flat, probably 20 to 30%, but most of it's in a 3G position. The other thing that it's like over here on pipeline, we have arc profile. We don't really care so much about that. It's more about being able to run it consistently. So you're going to say, so I would say probably the first thing would be CC/CV has to be, okay? If you're doing structural, you're going to be running wire somewhere along the job. Maybe not be the first year, may not be the second year, but the third year you get into it, you're going to be on jobs that require flex core. It's just what happens. And I'm going to do a video on code analysis, so the D1 code and why you can only weld with certain machines certain ways, and so stay tuned for that. So if you don't want to get busted on the new 2020 code, that's a good video to watch. So let's do... All right, so the next thing that I would say is, usually gas, but can be diesel. And I would say, and one thing I'll add over here to pipeline is diesel, is just because of the longer run times, because you're out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have time to go and fill up. With the structural side, it's mostly gas, and the reason being is because they kind of stockpile that already on site, or it can be diesel, okay? The next thing that I would say is probably small and portable. Okay, and the reason being is oftentimes structural guys have to lift machines up to 3-4 stories high and start welding from there. It's got to be a small footprint. It can either fit on a skid or be manually transported by itself using a skylift or whatever, but it needs to be something that can be even put on a cart and rolled into a work elevator and lifted to whatever floor it needs to be on. Okay, the reason being is it, these huge heavy Vantage 300s that you see on job sites and stuff, that's usually because they're renting from another company. But if you're a rig welder, I would highly suggest getting a portable machine if you're going to be doing mostly structural, because then you can just take your machine off your truck and move it to wherever you need to be. Because a lot of times when you show up, especially if you're a structural rig welder, you're getting called in because the iron workers that set the steel and the steel erectors actually don't have a welder on their team, and so they're going to have to either rent a machine or whatever. So if you show up with a machine that's portable and you can get into tight spaces, or like we did an example being a giant Amazon warehouse the floor is wide open, but when they're laying the concrete and stuff, they don't want trucks on it. So what they do is they have like these areas that you can park, but you don't have 900 feet of lead. Okay, so you need to be able to transport that really. You need to be able to transport that machine to wherever you need it to sit, so that way your 100 feet of lead or whatever will reach. So that's a key thing. Remember, let's say, I would say probably the next thing that's really kind of a big thing is durability, as far as like, how do I want to put this? I would, well, let's say OSHA, okay, OSHA compliant. And a lot of people might argue that that also applies to pipeline. That applies for certain jobs. A lot of times pipeline, especially if it's private industry or whatever, private companies, they will allow you to not have OSHA compliant machines. And the reason being is because you're not really dealing with OSHA environments. Unless you're doing batteries or whatever, then you might be dealing with that, or refinery work or whatever. Then you might have to have like really critical components, like your stinger can't be exposed. So if these stingers are out, you gotta have fully insulated stuff. You can't have, you know, magnetic grounds, or you can't have a T300, you know, for a ground clip. You got to have like something that actually screws down. And so that's kind of the biggest thing. So I would say, so OSHA compliance is a real big thing here. So machines that I would recommend for this, just off the bat, real quick, is going to be the Trailblazer. Okay. And the reason being is a lot of people that are structural have a tendency to jump back and forth between general and also to pipeline. So the Trailblazer is like the 325, Trailblazer 325, has the ability to do remotes, has the ability to do TIG, wire feed, arc gouging, everything. I mean, it can literally do everything, and it does it really well. It's actually, there, in my video about like the difference between welding machines, is very comparable to the Pipe Pro 400 as far as arc performance. And actually, me and Wally did a comparison analysis of running those machines head to head, and see who got to the bottom first. Yeah, there is some shoulder to the holder, you know, like, oh, he's better, you know, like who's a better welder kind of thing like that. But the biggest thing that we were trying to see is when Wally was welding with my machine, which at the time I had a Trailblazer 325, was it the same arc profile and arc performance that he was wanting, that he had on his Pipe Pro 400? And so surprisingly enough, it actually is. And it's the way the machines are built. They're actually built very similar to each other as far as the AC coil goes, and how the inverter and the computer and everything work. There's just a little bit more features sometimes added in the Pipe Pro 400 that you may not necessarily need right off the bat. So the Trailblazer 325 is a great machine if it's your first machine that you're going to buy and you want to get into it, but you're not really sure if you're going to follow the structural path, the general pipeline, or whatever. It kind of lets you float between everything, and it allows you to get the experience of the Pipe Pro 400, but without the ridiculous amount of cost. You can buy 2 of these for the price of 1 of those. Okay, so that's kind of one nice thing. The Trailblazer 325. I would say the Bobcat 250. Okay, is another good one. Lincoln Rangers. Here's your 305s. I'm gonna put possible MPX 330, and here is why. The MPX is kind of the competitive version to the Trailblazer from Lincoln's, and they did a lot of features that the Trailblazer has with the wire feed and all that, but the downside of it is that the MPX, it does, because it's a smaller footprint, it's a lot more closed of a case, and it does, what we've seen is that it actually does have overheating problems when you're welding at higher amperages for long periods of time. And that's maybe the Kohler engine. There could be a lot of different factors that go into it. The downside of it is that because it's kind of there is some issues with them, both from the computer side and just the engine standpoint, governors, things like that. That's why I said the possible MPX 330. It kind of depends if you get one or you find one on Facebook Marketplace that you are able to test that's kind of already been broken in, probably went through all those problems originally. It might be fixed and they could be great machines. So it just kind of, that's a luck of the draw kind of thing. So those are really the 4 that I would recommend for that. The next thing that we're going to step over to, okay, I'll talk about some of the features. So the Bobcat 250 is really nice because a lot of the ones now come with the on-off remote. So if you're doing structural welding, that's huge because probably 70% of the job, you're not going to actually be physically welding. You're going to be either using a grinder, which sometimes they already have extension cords laid out, or you're going to be, you know, you're going to be doing things, setting iron, especially if you're an iron worker who is a welder. You're going to be setting iron, doing things like that, and then going back and welding. So you don't need that machine running full time. So that's one really nice thing. The Ranger 305 gas, both the gas and the diesel are great machines. They are pretty rugged. You can actually do quite a bit with them. We have been able to, you know, basically pipeline with them, you know, welding up 188 wall, things like that. If you really can fine tune it, the biggest thing is having a remote with that machine if you're going to do that. But as far as structural stuff goes, those are great machines. Weld great. They're, you know, basically classic Lincoln adjustments as far as arc, amperage, and voltage goes. And then, like I said, the MPX 330. So, all right. So now the general side. All right. So I'm just going to put anything, okay, for the machines. And the reason being is because we do 1G all the way up to 6G welding, okay, position. Probably going to need CC/CV or separate machine, meaning you'll either need a short circuit machine like, you know, like one of these over here, the Hobart 140, or you know, the Lincoln. Oh yeah, I forgot to put one over here. I'll add this 140C. Okay, so you need either CCCV or separate machine because you're going to be doing hand rows, you're going to be doing structural pipe, whatever. It's really kind of the luck of the draw. You're also going to be doing maintenance. The other thing is that stick is a must. Okay, gotta be able to stick weld. Okay, and that's really big. The other thing that is AC plugs for, really, sorry, hold on everyone, for 120. And the reason being is because bandsaws, drills, a lot of different stuff runs on AC. And DeWalt is really, and grinders are kind of like the only thing that run on DC voltage. So AC plugs on your machine are a must. That being said, if you bought an SA200, some of them in the later years have AC plugs, and it's more of the classic ones that do. But as a result, you're going to either need an inverter, so you can pick those up from like Murdoch's, Tractor Supply, or whatever, and hook it into the battery and get your AC style for that, or you're going to need a machine that already has it on there. So AC plugs. I would say the other thing that you need really that is crucial in a machine is fuel economy. Okay, and possible remote. And I forgot to put that over here, so we'll go remote. Okay, remote is a must on pipeline. It is a possible thing on the general. It's not so important on the structural side. Hobby, it's really just not really a factor. If you want to get it, awesome. If you don't, it's not necessary. So that's the biggest thing. So like I said, anything. So really any of these, between these two, would fit into the anything category. If you were a previous pipeliner and you're doing more general welding, the SA200 is a great machine. And you can get an inverter, you know, slap it on there, slap it on the side, and it'll do everything that you need to do. You run bandsaws, things like that, and be able to cut and do what you need to do. And then you still have your ability to run your remote. Like I said, the Trailblazer is kind of like a great machine to buy as your first welder if you're not really sure if you're going to be a general, structural, or a pipeliner, because odds are you're not going to be breaking out as a welder and then just immediately jumping into pipeline. It's not really that smooth. You need experience in it. So either you're going to start as a helper, which odds are you're going to come across the ability to buy some of these machines over here and you're going to pick one up. Or if you start out as a general welder doing your own business kind of things, maintenance, repairs, stuff like that, the Trailblazer is a great machine because it's more advanced than most of these other machines, but it does allow you to do a lot of different stuff, and it allows you to have the ability to use a remote on it, which is really cool. And you can run wire, you can do all kinds of different welding processes off of that. The other ones you can, but they don't do it as well, so the arc performance and things like that does come into a factor of not being able to do it as well. So that's why I say really anything works. Get your foot in the door, be a general welder, you know, do it all, you know, don't say no to nothing. So that's really the biggest thing there. So hopefully this gives you guys kind of a little bit of an in-depth look on what is a factor in getting machines for whatever type of welding you're going to be doing. So thanks guys.